My name is Ray Collins. I'm 71 years old. I live in a small house outside Nashville, Tennessee. There are things I did on the road that I don't regret. There are things I did and do regret. And there's one thing I did, and I still don't know which category to put it in. This is a story about my best friend, about what I found out about him by accident, and about the decision I made after that. He's still alive. We're still friends, even though he has no idea that I know, and that he doesn't know that I know. That's the hardest part of this story. Harder than the betrayal itself. Harder than any decision I could have made. Because I've been carrying this for 37 years. Alone. And there's no end in sight. To understand what I'm talking about, I need to tell you about Danny first. Danny Holloway. We met in 8th grade. I was 13, he was 14. He just moved with his family into our neighborhood. His first day at the new school, he sat down at the desk next to mine in geography class and said, "Where do people actually eat around here after school?" I showed him. We went together. And somehow it just stayed that way. Almost 60 years later, still together. Danny is the kind of person it's hard to speak badly of, even when you know they're doing something wrong. There's something about him, warmth, openness, a kind of natural sincerity from the first moment that makes people like him. He doesn't try to be likable. He just is. We both went to work at the plant after school. We both hated it, but bills had to be paid. We both dreamed of something else. Danny was the first to make the move. He went to truck driving school at 28. I followed at 30. He always went a little ahead. I always went a little behind. That's just how it's always been between us. Danny married Susan Parker when we were both 25. I was his best man. Stood beside him at the altar, thinking I looked ridiculous in my rented suit. Susan was a beautiful bride, calm, assured, with the kind of smile that tells you right away this person knows what they want out of life. They made a good couple, not in a red carpet kind of way, just two ordinary people who were good together. I was at their place often, for dinners, for the kids' birthdays, for Christmas. I knew Susan almost as well as I knew Danny. She always put the coffee on before I had a chance to ask. She always remembered small things, that I don't eat cilantro, that I have a certain medication allergy, that I like that old jazz album she'd put on at a party once. A good woman. Genuinely good. 1987, August. I'd been on the road 2 years, Danny 4. We crossed paths on routes often, sometimes planned, sometimes by chance. The road is small when you drive the same highways. That time Danny offered to give me a ride to Atlanta. He was heading to Florida. I needed to pick up a load in Atlanta, and our routes overlapped. A few hours together, that was fine. We liked riding together when it worked out. We left early in the morning, talked about everything. The kids, cars, a mutual friend who'd recently gotten divorced and how he was doing. Danny was in a good mood, joking around, telling some funny story about a load he'd been given, and it turned out there was something alive inside. A rat had gotten between the crates somewhere back in Memphis. I laughed and thought how good it was to have days like this, when you just drive and talk and nothing special is required. Somewhere around noon, we stopped at a large truck stop in Georgia. A busy place, lots of rigs, a good diner. I knew it. I'd stopped there a few times. Danny said he was going to the restroom, and the diner asked if I wanted to eat too. I said I'd wait in the cab. I wanted to call my wife. We'd agreed I'd call at lunch. He left. I dialed. And while I was waiting for it to connect, I was looking out at the parking lot. A blue Honda pulled into the lot and stopped maybe 20 yards from our truck. A woman got out. Young, I'd say 25, maybe younger. Dark hair to her shoulders, a light floral dress, not the kind of thing you wear for a long drive, more the kind you wear when you want to look nice. She got out and immediately started looking around. She was looking for someone. Then from around the corner of the diner, not from the main door, from the side, Danny came out. I saw it clearly through the windshield. He walked up to her, quickly, confidently. She smiled. He hugged her. And right away, from the very first second, I understood this was not just some acquaintance he'd run into by chance. There is a difference between how you hug a friend and how you hug a woman. 32 years of friendship with Danny had taught me to know his every movement. This was not friendly. She rose up on her toes and kissed him. At that moment, my phone connected, and I heard my wife's voice. I said mechanically, without thinking, that everything was fine and I'd call back later. I hung up and just sat there. They stood and talked. 5 minutes, maybe a little more. I watched him hold her hands, watched her say something and him listen and nod, with that expression on his face that I know is the expression Danny has when he's genuinely interested, when he's actually listening, not just pretending. And then he looked around. That movement, it burned itself into my memory forever. Quick, automatic, reflexive. The movement of a person long accustomed to checking whether anyone is watching. Not nervous, calm, practiced. This was not the first meeting. Not by a long way. He hugged her once more. She got into the Honda and drove off. Danny went into the diner through the side door. 5 minutes later, he came back to the cab with 2 cups of coffee and a smile. Sorry I took so long. Line was long. He held out the coffee to me. Same open smile, same eyes, direct, warm. I took the coffee. No problem, I said, and we drove on. The rest of the drive to Atlanta, maybe 2.5 hours, I talked with Danny, answered his questions, laughed when I was supposed to laugh, told him things of my own. From the outside, an ordinary conversation between 2 friends. Inside, complete chaos. I kept replaying what I'd seen. Tried to find another explanation. Maybe a sister? No, he'd never mentioned a sister who lived in Georgia. Maybe an old friend? But that look around, that kiss. No. I knew what I'd seen, and I knew what it meant. Susan was at home with the kids, 5-year-old Tyler and 7-year-old Emma. She was making lunch or taking one of them to practice or reading aloud before bed. And she didn't know. I watched Danny's profile. He was driving, one hand on the wheel, window slightly open, humming something along with the radio, and thought that never in my life had I felt such a gap between the person I was looking at and what I knew about them. In Atlanta, we said goodbye normally. He hugged me, the way brothers do, tight, like always.
told me to call. I watched his truck pull away and thought, what now? The next few weeks were hard. Not in the sense that I couldn't eat or sleep, just that inside, the question kept turning over constantly. What do you do with something you know? I laid the options out like cards on a table. Tell Danny what I'd seen, and then what? He either admits it or denies it. If he denies it, we both know he's lying, and that lie will be between us forever. If he admits it, what next? He'll decide himself? But he'd already decided and chosen to continue. Tell Susan, and then what? A family falls apart. 2 children aged 5 and 7. She might choose to forgive. And then this secret lives between the 3 of us forever. Or she might choose divorce. And then I'm the person who destroyed my best friend's family.
Say nothing and carry it alone. See them together at Christmas, at the kids' birthdays, at family dinners. And know, every option had its price. I thought about my father. He always said that when you have to choose between truth and good, choose good. But what is good in this case? Good for whom? A month later, I ran into Danny at a truck stop. By chance, we often crossed paths on similar routes. We sat in the diner, had coffee, talked. At some point, he started telling me about Susan, that she'd asked him to buy new furniture for the kids' room. He'd promised but forgotten. She got a little upset. He bought flowers and she softened. He told it lightly, even warmly, like a person who loves his family and is a little embarrassed he let them down. And I looked at him and thought, do you actually think that? Do you actually feel that warmth toward her? And at the same time, what I saw in Georgia. How is that possible? But then I thought something else. Maybe that's exactly why I'll never understand. I've never lived in 2 parallel worlds. I don't know how it's arranged from the inside. I chose to stay silent. Not because it was right. I still don't know if it was right. But because when I sat and counted the price of every option, silence seemed like the option where I caused the least harm to people I didn't want to hurt. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe Susan had the right to know and I took that right from her by staying silent. Maybe silence is also a form of participation in someone else's lie. I've thought about this for years. I still think about it. Danny and Susan have been together 52 years now. The kids grew up. Tyler is an architect in Dallas. Emma is a teacher in Nashville. 4 grandchildren between them. In the photos on Danny's phone, him and Susan at some lake last summer, both smiling, his arm around her shoulders. Looks happy. Both of them. But I don't know what's behind that. Whether the woman in Georgia was the only one. Whether there were others. Whether Susan eventually figured it out and chose not to know. Whether she genuinely knows nothing and is happy in her not knowing. Does a person have the right to be happy not knowing the truth? I don't know the answer. Danny calls me every week. We talk for an hour about the grandkids, about health, about the news. He tells me about Susan, how she's taken up gardening, how they go dancing on Friday nights, how she called him in the middle of a workday recently just to say she loved him. I listen, I respond, I laugh when I'm supposed to, and I carry what I know, quietly, invisibly, for 37 years now. Sometimes I think I'll tell him one day,
that I'll say, "Danny, I know. I saw it back then in Georgia, and I stayed quiet all this time." But then I think, what for? So it gets easier for me? That's not a good enough reason. The road shows you people as they are, not as they want to appear. Sometimes that's beautiful. Sometimes it isn't. And sometimes you see something about a person you love, and you don't know what to do with that knowledge, and you live with it, and you carry it. There are things for which no right decision exists, only different versions of the price you pay.
I paid mine. I don't know if it was the right price, but there won't be another one now. Ray Collins, Nashville, Tennessee. See you next time.